this video, we're going to talk about layering, which is the most fundamental part of digital art and digital painting. Now, unfortunately, we're going to talk about the principle, so basically, we're not going to talk about anything that's in this drawing right now. We're not going to get to any of this cool stuff, but we will in later videos. For now, we're going to do what's in this drawing. This is what I made for today's video. I don't know how this happened, but here you are. So we're going to start by talking about the background. We're going to start by talking about what happens right when you open up your document, which is Photoshop automatically gives you this layer called background. Notice that it is locked. What that means is if you go up here to your move tool and you try to move it, Photoshop tells you you can't do that because the layer's locked. So your background layer, you can do some things to change it, but in essence, it's always going to stay your background layer. It's always going to be at the bottom. You can't change its opacity. You can't change its order. Like I said, it's always going to be at the bottom, and you can't move it anywhere. On the other hand, when you make another layer, you can do whatever the heck you want with it. If there was anything on the layer, I could move it around. If I create another layer, I can reorder these two all day if I want to. I can change the opacity. I can mess with any of these settings on here. I can do whatever I want. But basically, your background layer, don't touch it. You can choose different fill colors for it, and you can paint on it if you want to, but you need to exercise caution because while you're free to do what you want with additional layers, on the background layer, it gets a little bit trickier. For instance, if I were to draw something on it, and I thought, oh, this circle should go a little bit to the right or to the left, again, I can't move it because the layer's locked. It's the background layer. And then if I decide, well, I'll just select it, what happens now is that what you drew on top of the background is now attached to the pixels that were on the background. So this is what's going to happen. You're taking the background pixels with you, which might not bother you, but, you know, let's say I'm going to make a misshapen snowman and my snowballs are not touching, so I'm going to make them touch. And, oh, I can't really do that because the pixels are attached. So that's why I recommend the first thing that you do when you open a document is you make a new layer so that you avoid doing that. I've done that many, many times where maybe I hit undo one too many times or just forgot, and I ended up drawing on the background layer, and I had to do everything over again because if you make a sketch or a nice line drawing, I mean, you can't color underneath it, you can't move it, you can't really do anything. So that's why I always recommend starting with a new layer. Now, basically the most common use of layering would be in a sad little drawing like this, where you have your line work, your coloring, and your shading, and you order them about like this. With line work at the top and coloring on the bottom and shading in the middle. So when you start, typically, I mean, most people start with their line work, and then you just make a new layer and you start your coloring, you make another new layer and you do your shading. And why you do this on more than one layer is because all of the layers are independent. So all of the elements on each layer are independent from elements on another layer. So my line work, I can move that away from the rest of the drawing if I want to, and it doesn't change anything on the other layers. I can move out the shading, I can move out the coloring. I could even decide that maybe I don't like the coloring, and I can erase that, and it doesn't affect anything else except what is on that layer. So that layering is really useful for people who are indecisive and change their minds a lot, or if there's, you know, a particular element that you think, I'm not so sure about this color or about this shape right now, and that makes it easy for you to change it later. That's essentially all there is when it comes to basic layering. Again, we'll go over more complex principles in the next video, but for now, just focus on understanding how ordering layers works, and just experiment with that and see what you get.